So how well do you have control over your emotions? Let's consider some scenarios. Let's say, for example, you have this desire, this craving to eat junk food, even though you're telling yourself logically, I shouldn't eat this. I know it's bad for me, but does the emotionally driven desire and craving get the better of you and it wins and you end up eating the junk food? Or do you find yourself in situations where you're frustrated, angry, upset, and you're telling yourself you got to dial it back, you got to pull it back, get it under control. But then the emotions just well up and you're like, I got to get this out of my system, I got to get this off my chest, and you end up saying or doing something that you later regret. Or do you find yourself maybe having a battle against a bad habit? And again, you need to give it up, but that's why it's a bad habit. You're thinking, oh my goodness, I got to stop this. I don't want to give in to this. But the craving, the emotionally driven craving to satisfy that bad habit, whatever it may be, becomes so strong sometimes that it's hard to win that battle no matter how many times you tell yourself not to. Well, if emotions are getting the better of you from time to time or a lot of time, then how's that making your life? Is it improving your life? Is it making it more miserable? Well, there's a good chance that it's probably not doing too many good things. Emotions are great, but when they're under control, when you can manage them in an effective way. So, that's what we're going to talk about today, how to control your emotions. And I could share with you some tips and tricks and strategies, and I'm going to do a little bit of that, but more so what I want to do in this video is explain the mechanics of how this works, why you can tell yourself don't do it, and why the emotions get the better of you anyway. So we're going to use a rocket ship here as a metaphor to explain how this process works. So by looking at this rocket, you don't need to look at this rocket because you probably know how rockets work in general. And that is that it has a billion different parts and pieces, but we're going to look at two main elements that make this rocket go. First one is its fuel. You've got all the rocket fuel coming out the back here. That fuel pushes the rocket forward, enables it to go in amazing places at a fast speed. It's very powerful. But in addition to that fuel, you have, we'll say it's up here, you'll have a guidance system. And that guidance system is kind of the rocket's brain. And it enables this rocket to control the fuel that comes out of the back, how much, how little, how more than it needs, maybe the direction of the thrust, and it does all these different things to control the fuel itself. So the guidance system is important in order for this rocket to function properly. Now, what would happen if you were to take that guidance system and completely remove it or it started malfunctioning? Well, you'd have something like this rocket over here where it's moving in a chaotic and disorganized way. This rocket, its guidance system isn't working too well. It's got tons of fuel, but it has no direction, no ability to control all that power because the guidance system isn't working properly. Now, are you seeing where I'm going with this? Probably, but let me just tell you, you and I are like this rocket. We have fuel in the form of emotion. That emotion is energy, power. It motivates us to do things, to move forward in our life. But we also have a guidance system. And that guidance system is our ability to think, critical thinking skills. Now, I'm not talking about memorizing facts and figures here. I'm talking about having the ability in our brains to stop, look at a situation, analyze what's going on, ask questions, understand what's going on, reason on it, and be able to take the appropriate action. So that's what this rocket's guidance system does. It looks at different factors, the wind, its speed, all these different things so it can control the energy, the rocket fuel. Now, when we are able to develop our critical thinking skills and reason and think and understand, guess what? We're going to be able to regulate and manage our emotions better because of those critical thinking skills. Our guidance system is working at an optimal level when we are developing those skills. But on the opposite end, what ends up happening? When we aren't able to slow down, analyze, reason, think things through because our brain isn't being exercised in that way, we're not developing our critical thinking skills, then emotion is still strong. It's as strong in the person that has a guidance system as it is that has a faulty guidance system, but the person with a functioning guidance system is able to control it and regulate it. Whereas a person that has a faulty guidance system, very little critical thinking skills, the emotion wins out. It's winning the battle on a regular basis. So the key here is to really get control over the fuel, the rocket fuel, by improving your guidance system, by developing critical thinking skills. And to help you to maybe think about this a little bit more, let me give you a couple of ideas to consider when it comes to this battle between your ability to think clearly and your emotion, because they're both factors in your life. And you can think about it when maybe you're upset, like we talked about earlier. You ever hear of somebody being called blind with rage? You know, they get so emotional, and that emotion is so powerful within them that they can't even think straight. You've probably heard that, right? And that's because the emotion is overpowering the ability to reason and think. What you want to do is reverse that. You want to develop those critical thinking skills so you can get that emotion under control and keep it regulated. Or here's one more space analogy. Going to Star Trek, the original series. Think about Spock. Here you have a man, if you will, who had green blood, I guess, but you have this man, and what was he known for? He was known for having this ultimate ability to use reasoning, use understanding at a deep, deep level. But guess what he lacked as a result was the emotional aspect of being a human, even though he was Vulcan. So what it was highlighting there, and Gene Roddenberry was very ahead of his time in this way, is that the critical thinking skills of Spock were so powerful and of the Vulcan race that it had been able to suppress emotion completely. Now, of course, you don't want to do that, but it just shows you the connection between if you can develop those critical thinking skills, then you can regulate your emotions better because they're tied together. The stronger critical thinking skills are, the more you'll be able to control those emotions. So how do you do this? Well, you want to really exercise your brain and your ability to think on a regular basis. And here are several ways that you can do it. Very simple. Of course, learning, reading, and I'm not just, again, talking about taking in facts, but as you're learning, as you're listening to podcasts, workshops, videos, reading books, you're asking questions. You're trying to understand deeper concepts. You're trying to dig into what's beneath the surface so you can understand the meaning of what's being said, why it's being said, concepts that are being applied at a deep, deep level. That is exercising your brain and its thinking abilities. Again, it's not about facts and figures. Another thing you can do is get out of your comfort zone and do things that you're not used to doing. Let me use the example of this YouTube channel or any YouTube channel. If you have never done this before, and even if you have, there are parts to this process that you need to learn and understand and practice. And it's only by doing and taking action that you're going to understand YouTube and how it works, the analytics, the click-through rates, the different elements of this entire process. But you have to get your hands dirty. You have to do it. And it's only then that you can exercise those critical thinking skills to improve your ability to stop and analyze and think things through. Another way is to practice a hobby. If you want to play guitar or learn how to draw or paint or things like that, you're solving problems, you're coming up with ideas, you're seeing how things function and work. When you're trying to learn a song, you have to use your critical thinking skills to understand what chords are being used, the speed at which they're being used, the transitions, how soft, how loud they're being played. When you're painting, you're figuring things out by brush strokes, what color combinations work, all these different factors that put your critical thinking skills to work so that when you need them to combat any emotional urges or powerful emotional things that want to come up and take over, then you're able to use those critical thinking skills. They kick in automatically because they're so strong and you've been using them. So that's the main idea here. Develop your critical thinking skills doing these various different things. And I hope that you found this useful. And if you did, please like, comment, and share. I'd appreciate it very much. And I hope that you have an amazing day.